Prometheus Unbound, the creation and consequence of Frankenstein's monster. In the flickering candlelight of my study, I, Victor Frankenstein, put pen to paper to recount the horrifying tale that has consumed my life. My hands tremble as I write, not from the biting cold of the Arctic winds that howl outside my window, but from the weight of the terrible knowledge I bear. I must unburden myself of this dark secret, before it drives me to madness or worse. I was born into a life of privilege in Geneva, Switzerland, the eldest son of a respected family. My childhood was one of happiness and intellectual curiosity, nurtured by loving parents who encouraged my passion for learning. From an early age, I was fascinated by the mysteries of nature and the power of science to unlock them. It was at the University of Ingolstadt that my fateful journey began. There, under the tutelage of brilliant professors, I delved deep into the studies of natural philosophy and chemistry. But it was the field of galvanisms, the concept that electricity could reanimate dead tissue, that truly captured my imagination. I became obsessed with the idea of creating life. Not content with the natural processes of birth and death, I sought to usurp the power of God Himself. In my arrogance, I believed I could improve upon nature's design, creating a being of unprecedented beauty and strength. For 2 years, I labored in secret, pushing the boundaries of science and morality. I haunted graveyards and charnel houses, collecting the raw materials for my unholy experiment. The stench of death became as familiar to me as the scent of my mother's perfume had once been. In my makeshift laboratory, I stitched together a patchwork of purloined body parts, selecting each with care. The brain of a renowned scholar, the hands of a skilled artist, the heart of a passionate lover, I spared no effort in my quest for perfection. On a dreary night in November, my labors reached their apotheosis. As a storm raged outside, casting eerie shadows through the windows of my chambers, I prepared to infuse my creation with the spark of life. The apparatus I had constructed hummed with electrical energy, casting a sickly glow over the shrouded form on the slab before me. With trembling hands, I threw the switch. Lightning crashed, and for a moment, the room was bathed in blinding light. As the glare faded, I saw a finger twitch, then an arm. Slowly, jerkily, the creature began to move. Yellow eyes fluttered open, fixing upon me, with an intensity that chilled me to my core. In that moment, as I gazed upon the fruit of my labors, a wave of revulsion washed over me. The being I had created was not the Adonis I had envisioned, but a hideous mockery of human form. Its skin, which I had selected for its alabaster beauty, was now a sickly, translucent yellow, barely concealing the work of muscles and blood vessels beneath. The lustrous black hair I had so carefully transplanted only served to accentuate the creature's ghastly pallor, and its eyes, oh, those terrible, watery eyes, stared at me with a mixture of confusion and accusation. Horrified by what I had wrought, I fled from the laboratory, abandoning my creation in its first moments of life. I collapsed into a fitful sleep, haunted by nightmares of those accusing eyes and grasping hands. When I awoke the next morning, I dared to hope that the events of the previous night had been nothing more than a fever dream. But as I entered my chambers, I found them empty. The creature was gone, Relief warred with a gnawing sense of responsibility. What had I unleashed upon the world? I consoled myself with the thought that surely such an aberration could not long survive in a world it was never meant to inhabit. I threw myself back into my studies, desperate to forget the horrors I had witnessed, but fate would not allow me to escape the consequences of my actions so easily. News reached me of my young brother William's murder near our family home in Geneva. Grief-stricken, I returned to my homeland, only to be confronted with a sight that froze the blood in my veins. There, lurking in the shadows near the scene of the crime, I caught a glimpse of my creation. The monster had survived and grown strong. It had learned and adapted, and now it had blood on its hands. The realization of what I had done not just to the creature, but to my own family hit me with the force of a physical blow. But worse was yet to come. Justine Moritz, a kind and gentle girl who had been like a sister to me, was accused of William's murder. Despite my certainty of her innocence, I could not bring myself to reveal the truth. My silence condemned her to death, adding another weight to my already burdened conscience. Driven by guilt and a desperate need for answers, I retreated to the solitude of the Alps. It was there, amidst the icy peaks and desolate glaciers, that I once again encountered my creation. The creature approached me, no longer the mute, stumbling thing I had abandoned, but an articulate and deeply wounded being. It spoke of its abandonment, its loneliness, and its desperate attempts to find acceptance in a world that recoiled from its very existence. I listened, horror-struck, as it recounted its experiences since that fateful night in Ingolstadt. It had learned language by observing a poor family in secret, developing not just the ability to speak, but a deep longing for companionship and love. The monster's eloquence and evident suffering stirred something within me. For the first time, I saw not just the hideous exterior, but the tortured soul within. It was a mirror of my own hubris and folly, a living embodiment of the consequences of playing God. Yet even as I felt a flicker of compassion, the creature made a demand that chilled me to my core. It wanted a companion, a female of its own kind. Only then, it promised, would it leave humanity in peace and retreat to the wilds of South America. Torn between my sense of responsibility and my horror at the thought of creating another such being, I initially refused, but the creature's threats and my own guilt eventually wore down my resistance. I agreed to its demand, though every fiber of my being rebelled against the idea. I retreated to a remote Scottish island to begin work on a female companion for my creation. But as I progressed in my grim task, doubts began to gnaw at me. What if this new creature proved even more malevolent than the first? What if they reproduced, creating a race of monsters that could threaten humanity's very existence? In a moment of clarity, or perhaps cowardice, I destroyed my half-finished work. The creature, who had been watching my progress from afar, witnessed this betrayal and flew into a rage. It swore vengeance, promising to be with me on my wedding night. I dismissed its threat as the raving of a spurned monster, but I underestimated its cunning and determination. On the night of my marriage to my beloved Elizabeth, the creature made good on its promise. I found my bride dead in our marriage bed, Another innocent life, destroyed by my hubris. Grief-stricken and consumed by guilt, I vowed to hunt down my creation and destroy it, even if it meant following it to the ends of the earth. And so began a chase that has led me here, to the frozen wastes of the Arctic. For months I have pursued the creature across icy plains and treacherous glaciers. The cold has seeped into my bones, and I fear I have little time left. But I cannot rest until I have undone the evil I have wrought upon the world. As I write these words, I am aboard the ship of Robert Walton, an explorer who found me near death on the ice. I have recounted my tale to him, hoping that my experience might serve as a warning to others who would seek to penetrate nature's secrets. The hubris of man knows no bounds, but nature will not be mocked. In my quest to create life, I have brought only death and suffering. My creation, born of noble intentions, but raised in cruelty and isolation, has become a mirror of humanity's darkest impulses. Yet even now, as I feel my strength ebbing, I cannot help but wonder who is the true monster in this tale. Is it the creature, thrust into a world that reviles it, acting out of pain and loneliness? Or is it I, the so-called man of science, who abandoned my creation in its moment of greatest need? Perhaps we are both victims and perpetrators, caught in a cycle of violence and recrimination that can end only in mutual destruction. As I near the end of my journey, I am haunted by the thought that my creature and I are not so different after all. We are both lonely, both seeking understanding in a world that offers little compassion. I hear footsteps approaching my cabin. Is it Walton, come to check on my health? Or has my creation finally caught up with me, ready to fulfill its promise of vengeance? In truth, I am beyond caring. Let what may come, come. I am ready to face the consequences of my actions, be they at the hands of man or monster. To you, dear reader, I leave this cautionary tale. Let my folly serve as a warning to those who would seek to usurp the power of nature. There are secrets in this world that mankind was never meant to uncover, forces we can neither control nor fully comprehend. The door creaks open, and I lift my eyes from the page. A towering shadow fills the doorway, familiar yet alien. Yellow eyes meet mine, filled with a lifetime of pain and rage. My creation has found me at last. As I face my fate, I am struck by a final, terrible irony. In my quest to create life, I have brought only death. In seeking to become a god, I have damned myself and all those I loved. And in trying to fashion a being of unprecedented beauty and power, I have created a monster not just in flesh, but in my own soul. The creature advances, its massive hands reaching for me. I do not resist. Perhaps in death, we will both find the peace that has eluded us in life. And perhaps in some small way, the ending of our tragic tale will restore the balance I so arrogantly sought to disrupt. To you, Walton, I entrust these pages. May they serve as both confession and caution. The pursuit of knowledge is noble, but it must be tempered with wisdom and compassion. For in the end, it is not the power of creation that defines us, but how we wield that power and bear its consequences. As the monster's hands close around my throat, I close my eyes. In my final moments, I see not the hideous visage before me, but a reflection of my own flawed humanity. And in that reflection, I find a glimmer of understanding, and perhaps, at long last, redemption.